Alright everybody, so we're going to start off with our first sequence video. He's going to start off with our first sequence video.
Welcome to the posture movement.
Welcome. Let's try that again.
We're going to start off with a sequence.
I was getting into it, man. I was ready. I was fired up. I want to sequence this shit. I know, I am tired.
Welcome to the posture movement. Today we're going to talk about a hip stabilization sequence. We challenge you guys to try this before squat, deadlift, or any sort of gym regimen, or just if you want to increase your potential for functional movement patterning.
We're going to start off with a couple exercises that are going to help you get into a better position to help do what I think is one of the most universal exercises in the gym, which is a squat and deadlift, as Kai was saying. What we're going to do is we're going to do a 5-exercise warm-up, and then we're going to kind of talk about what exercises to do literally in between sets. I know a lot of people have heard trying to drop set, trying to superset. We're going to do workouts a little bit different. And instead of supersetting legs with another heavy leg exercise, why don't we try supersetting legs with a hip stabilization exercise so we can get functional, get strong, and get straight all in the same workout.
Remember, work smart, not hard, and you'll always be faster to the finish. Just a few little nerd points on the exercises that we're going to utilize. And just to answer some frequently asked questions, recognize that when you're going through a squat mechanism or a deadlift, that the pelvis does have to go into posterior pelvic tilt, allowing for direct primary hip flexor engagement and primary erector engagement as well.
Alright, so the first exercise that we're going to start off in the sequence is one of my favorite exercises to do of all time for a couple of reasons. Number one, going into a heavy or even a light squat day, this is going to be a phenomenal exercise to first assess what the body's doing. As you can tell, we have Justin here laying on the ground who's in a really deep squat position, but he's not loaded.
So let's get a little bit nerdy. What we're really talking about here, hip socket flexion, lumbar extension, knee flexion, ankle flexion. So just as Vinny has said, we're in a deep hip and deep squat position, allowing the trunk or everything from the belly button up to reestablish its position on top. We're also taking out any transverse deviation through the femur and also through the tibia. So if you're working with athletes that have tibial torsion, most specifically we're going to be talking about your soccer players, a lot of your high impact football players, your wrestlers, and a lot of tennis players. These are going to be really helpful positions to allow the primary hip flexor psoas to lengthen and the glutes to lengthen as well, changing the position of the pelvis and allowing more of a vertically loaded position through the squat mechanism.
And for a lot of people out there too, this is going to give you some really great fundamental basic information. One of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to be able to get into this position, which tells us that the body is going to allow us to actually go through the flexion that Kai's talking about, or the hips are going to come off the ground and your body's going to say, there's no way in heck this position is happening. So go back and think about, if we have somebody that can't even get into this position, I don't think we should be going into heavy loaded motion. The body's telling us that it's not ready to go into this deep of a hip position yet. You're first down in here. I want you to give presence to what you feel. Check in with your shoulders. Does one shoulder feel higher off the ground? Does one hip feel higher off the ground? Listen to what your body's telling you, because if it's happening here, chances are when you have a heavy weight on your back or in front of you, the same thing is going to happen.
Duration, minimum 4 minutes. You're going to lie down on your back about 6 to 12 inches away from the wall, depending on how much hip tension you have. If it's too tight, back away. We're not looking for pain here. What we're looking for is to feel some of the body working, stretching, and changing position. You'll lie down, arms out to your side about 45 degrees. We want you to diaphragmatically breathe. That means your belly is going to expand as you're breathing through this. Notice we've got the camera over the top so you guys can see that his knees are in line with his feet and the outsides of his feet are straight. We have 5 toes. The middle one should point forward. For most of you, that's going to feel slightly pigeon-toed or slightly turned in, and that's what we're looking for as we reestablish the muscles in the bottom of the leg in terms of working with the femur or the hip in the proper position of movement. All right, guys, so second exercise in the hip stabilization sequence, when you're going into those workload lifts in the gym, we're gonna do some foot circles. So what you're gonna wanna do, lie down on your back, grab one leg with your hands. The opposite leg will be bent, foot flat, pressing your pelvis flat to the ground. Now, a lot of the times we hear about neutral spine. Don't worry about it. Relax completely, that's neutral. Okay, your pelvis should be on the ground and it should be in line with your shoulders. You're gonna circle your foot 1 minute in both directions, 1 minute point flex.
Think about, we live in an asymmetrical world, driving a car, always using one foot over the other. This is one of my other favorite exercises to do before a squat or a deadlift day because it's going to help kind of wake up the muscles on each side of the body. You saw in our last video that we put both sides of the body under the same force at the exact same time. We're going to do somewhat of a similar thing but take a different approach. We're going to try and isolate one leg at a time while still having the other hip help out in just a slightly different fashion.
Just like Vinny's talking about, notice the perspective change. We're actually going from a bilaterally loaded exercise to a unilaterally loaded exercise. And we want you to be aware, check in with your upper body. You'll notice it changes based on the bilateral load versus the unilateral load. Those of you nerds out there might be asking questions why we're considering this a loaded exercise, and that's because gravity is always working on us. So as much as this is an open, packed movement, this is a loaded exercise. As he circles his ankle, notice that he's getting his toes to wiggle as well. Again, this is going to work toward taking out any tibial torsion, and it's going to change the femoral position based on the bottom of the leg changing position, also allowing the trunk to reestablish its neutral position in between the two sides of the pelvis.
For the next exercise, which is going to build off of the previous two, we're going to have Justin do a supine rotated hip stabilization exercise. We're going to have him start by laying out, completely spread out like he is, and we're going to have one leg go on top of the other. So go ahead and place the heel right on top of the toes. And
now notice here as he brings one leg on top of the other, he doesn't bring his legs together. We're actually going on to one hip, not onto both.
And as every exercise that we're going to do, it's always for a reason. So this reason, I really want to test his ability to rotate onto this hip. Let's see the kind of traction that we can get in this position. What we're trying to do is go back to getting the body ready for squat motions and deadlifting motions, which incorporates the upper body and the lower body working together. This exercise is going to help us engage the right muscles in his upper body in terms of when Justin rolls his hips over. So let's get back into the position, one foot on top of the other, fire your glutes and your quads. As he rotates this way, it's going to allow his erectors to kind of help stabilize the spine and allow it to do its job, which is get true lateral hip stability while the glutes are engaged, while the quads are both engaged. To finish up this pre-squat sequence, we're gonna come full circle. We start off with bilaterally loaded exercise, move our way through unilateral hip stabilization, and then we're gonna finish off with another bilateral exercise, which is gonna set us up really nicely for a squat position. This next exercise, I'm sure we've seen a dozen times done in the gym. We're gonna do this in a little bit of a different fashion. It's technically a wall squat. We're gonna have Justin lean up against the wall and slowly start walking out. As he's walking out, I want his feet and knees about fist to about fist and a half width apart. So I don't wanna see the knees bow out to the side. Think about a true functional straight position, and he's gonna slowly come and slide down the wall.
Outsides of the feet straight, minimum we're looking at 2 minutes. Now recognize, and the challenge for this exercise is this will help you get into a squat position. This will help you utilize the same muscles that you're gonna utilize there. Now you hear your trainers talking about don't utilize this muscle versus utilize that muscle. When you breathe, you're using all the muscles in your body, so don't even worry about trying to not use muscles specifically. Make sure your pelvis is down in the ground, make sure your stomach is relaxed and your shoulders are relaxed completely. If you're having trouble finding weight into your heels, pull your toes up off of the ground, especially pinky toes.
We're gonna maybe stall and make him hold this a little bit longer. One way that you can do this is you can actually force lumbar extension and throw your shoulders and head back to the wall, which is gonna kind of train a compensation pattern that we don't wanna do. So remember, relax everything. Tuck your hips back, push your back into the wall, turn your quads on as much as possible while your toes are lifted up, so those same muscle groups show up for you while you have heavy loaded movement next.
We want you to send us your wall sit videos. So if you got 100 people, if you got a bunch of kids, if you did this for 10 minutes, shoot it our way. We're gonna put you on our channel.